I knew when I was summoned to his bedside that his intentions were evil. But never would I have imagined that after forcing me to lie with him, would he then cast me out. I have nothing left. I am worse than a servant. I am now enslaved to a lifetime of isolation. Where should I carry my shame? But my father, he will do something right. My father, the king, he's a good man. He will do something. Why do you look at me with empty stares? I don't understand. He will do something to right this horrific wrong. You do not speak. I understand. You know the end of the story. He does nothing. I am nothing to him. Darkness prevails in this passage. The beautiful and innocent virgin princess becomes the center of her brother's sick, power-hungry sexual fantasy. And this in itself is not the worst of what is to come. After a violent rape and expulsion from her brother, Tamar must face the ultimate injustice, the rejection of her father. When David becomes aware of this horrific rape, what does he do? He turns a blind eye to it. And why does he do this? Because of his love for Amnon. Because he is the firstborn, he overlooks this horrific crime. Tamar's very father, king, and supposed protector of the land does nothing to right this horrific wrong. In the text, we see that when David hears of this, he becomes very angry. Yet the text does not specifically say what it is that enraged him. Phyllis Tribble, author and theologian, questions, is David's anger at Amnon for what he has done? Or is David angry about what has happened to Amnon? In other words, does the father's love for his firstborn condone or denounce this crime? The Greek Bible removes the ambiguity for us, stating that, and he, David, did not rebuke Amnon because he loved him, for he was the firstborn. Tribble concludes her assessment with this statement: David's anger signifies complete sympathy for Amnon and total disregard for Tamar. How appropriate that the story never refers to David and Tamar as father and daughter. The father identifies with the son. The adulterer supports the rapist. Male has joined male to deny justice for female. So where does this depiction of David fit into the gospel story? I grew up taking family vacations to my grandparents' cabin in Southern Oregon. Every fall, every spring break, every summer, my family would pack our things and take the car over to this beautiful cabin in this beautiful forest on a lake. My brother and I literally spent hours upon hours climbing trees, building forts, hiding among the reeds which lined the creek beds. And one summer, when we had packed all of our bags and I was so anticipating the exciting adventures that await me at this beautiful cabin house on a lake, when we drove into the forested area, we were greeted, surprisingly, by some forest rangers. And they explained to my family that a month earlier, in the heat of the summer, there had been a horrible lightning storm. And a lightning bolt had hit a tree. And being that everything was so incredibly dry, the tree caught fire and spread throughout acres of this beautiful forest. There I was, staring into black, charred nothingness. The fire had raped the land of its once beautiful vegetation. Where beauty and mystery once existed, now laid nothing. The forest fire that raped my playground of evergreens and flower fields, however, did not have the final say. After wandering about the black nothingness for quite a time, I noticed in the distance a small patch of color. And so walking toward it, I found a beautiful, fragile, purple and green flower that was emerging from the black nothingness. The fire did not have the final say. The story of Tamar does not end with David's rejection. Absalom, her brother, takes action and kills Amnon for what he has done. And Absalom then flees from the kingdom for fear of David. Absalom stays away from the kingdom for 3 years, and upon returning, the narrator of our scripture story tells us a new story, the story of Absalom's offspring. Scripture says, "There were born to Absalom 3 sons and 1 daughter. Her name was Tamar." Absalom in this scripture creates a living memorial for his sister. She becomes a beautiful flower which grows amongst the charred and devastated forest floor. Desolation does not have the final word. But I am still bothered. Although Tamar's rape has been avenged, murder seems like a horrible ending to an already tragic story. Has justice truly been done? And as I wrestled with this question, I realized that I had a lot of anger toward David. And as I continued to wrestle with this anger, I realized to my own horror that I am not that different from him. I am not that different from David. I realize that I, too, often turned a blind eye to injustice. How often do I ignore the injustices which rape our world? It is easy for me to ignore the cries of third world countries, the cries of poverty, the cries of numerous preventable death from the AIDS epidemic or Darfur genocide. It is easy for me to pretend that my Mexican neighbors just do not exist. How often do I, like David, turn a blind eye to the injustices that rape our world? David allowed the fire to consume the land. He was unaware of what Amnon was about to do. But when he discovered it, he turned a blind eye to it. David is the only character in this story who has the power to bring justice to injustice, the power to right a horrific wrong. But he was so consumed with the love for his son that he chose to do nothing, and so allowed the fire to rape and murder the beauty and mystery of the land. We, as the church, like David, have the power to mobilize for change.